Hello, this is a video. Please watch it, like and subscribe, I guess. I don't know. So, JJ McCullough, he's a YouTuber, right? He's a bit of a controversial figure because, like, it's a whole can of worms. Yeah, he said some stuff about Quebec that crosses the line into kind of a, how do I put it, a sus territory. But, like, if you look at his opinions broadly, I'd argue that, well, he says dumb shit. He isn't any, for lack of a better term, worse than, like, your average Democrat. Like, he's not, like, some awful person. It's not like he's, like, fucking, what's his name? What's the name of the person I'm thinking of? The Quartering. He's not that kind of dipshit, you know? He comes off as genuine. He isn't, like, some far-right dipshit. He's a normie, you know? But pretty often he does say some shit that qualifies as dumb shit. And in this video, I'm going to talk about one of those pieces of dumb shit. This being one of the points he made in his video about why video games are considered lowly as culture. Well, technically, it's not quite. Well, yes, it is his point, being that video games can't really be art. He cites a Robert by. I tripped on my words there. He cites an argument by Robert Ebert, which is basically just that games can never be art because you interact with them and you control them, and it's like there's points and an objective, and it's like, yeah, that can never be art. And in this video, I'm going to deconstruct that. For one, I'd argue that the view that to be art, something has to convey a message or themes and all that, or like convey themes in the form of in a message, is quite asinine thing, for lack of a better term. It's a gross oversimplification of art. Almost in some ways, it kills art. Like Sonic Mania doesn't have themes in it, but it's classic Sonic. It's a nostalgia trip. There's lots of love put into it. There's lots of love for the classic games conveyed through it. Like that game is 100% art. But, like, it does not have a message, you know? Like, just for example, you know, like, there's a lot of things which are very much artistic without having a message. So, yeah, but that's my first and my weaker counter argument. And now moving to my second and my stronger counter argument. So one of the things he references Ebert saying is that if games have any, if any game is artistically meritorious, then that means it's basically just a movie, but like covered by like pretending to be a game, and like it's like, oh yeah, it's just fundamentally it's not different from other forms of medium like film, literature, dance, music, and it's like my counter argument to that is, yeah, movies aren't an art form. Movies are just like, it's you can't actually pay attention to the words they're saying, to the words they use to describe it, because you just see it, right? And like if a movie manages to be really really evocative and like and tell a great narrative and with like cool themes in it, then like that's still then at that point it's just imitating novels, right? It's not a distinct thing. Not like movies can't uniquely convey things by having ambiguity in like things like facial expressions, and like camera work's a thing. It's not like you can't have things in the background in movies that you only notice the second time through, which doesn't apply so much in novels. It's not like what was I about to say? Fuck. There's a thing, oh hell, like kind of music in the background which helps convey the themes of a movie, which you couldn't do in a novel. No. And the same thing applies to video games, you know? The thing is, there are unique ways you can convey a message, you can convey your themes, all that through gameplay, you know? Like, the unique thing about video games as a medium, which I actually think there's a lot of untapped potential here, is that you are an entity with agency within this world. Like, a great example of this, which really blows his argument right out of the water, is Undertale, which I don't want to spoil it, but it does a lot to convey its various messaging through gameplay, and it's like it's a parody of traditional RPGs. It's vague anti-colonial messaging mainly at the start. It's also like, oh, hippy dippy, like the best outcomes happens if you don't kill anyone. There's a lot of Christian undertones in it, as well as it also tells a direct narrative about how we conveys direct narrative message about how we actually engage with games artistically, and like it uses the fact that it's a game and that some characters in the game's world are aware that it's a game to both to play with the player's expectations, to scare the player, and also to actually ask these questions. Plus, you don't need to strip back all the HUD and all the overtly gamey elements like an objective to do this. You know, Undertale takes advantage of gamey elements like LV, I'm not telling you what that stands for, and like EXP, again, not telling you what that stands for, and like things like that to tell its narrative. And even if we aren't talking about video games, like in the original 1994 Donkey Kong Country, between the fact that the Kremlings are an invading force, they're building factories, ruining the nature on Donkey Kong Island, and the fact that they're dressed to look like the U.S. Army and are like, the game has pretty noticeable imperialist messaging, but like, it does that while being a game where you collect bananas to increase your score and beat levels and have a final boss to beat. You know? A couple minutes later, JJ even makes a separate point about why video games aren't taken seriously, being that gaming is much more of a niche insular subculture, and like he references the way it was in the 90s, where it's like the gaming magazines existed, and it's like, well, the gaming magazines were like the center of it, but like they're like, it was very insular. It's like, oh yeah, tough gamer, and it's like, like it's very like, ooh, like scary, ooh, kitty, not serious, not adult, or like adults in the wrong way, like adult isn't not for kids, but like it's a kitty thing. You know what he knows what he said. In fact, I'm gonna play audio from him on top of a still image because I can't actually download the video off the internet, but I can record the audio by playing on my phone next to my iPad recording, and I can take a screenshot and put it on screen, so that's what I'm gonna do. But anyway, with that what's said.
Growing up in the 80s and 90s, I certainly remember video games getting branded with a bit of an outsider or even bad boy image. Part of this was because back in those days, video games were often accused of being morally bad. But it was also a choice that I think the video game industry made in terms of how they chose to market their games and to who, and the sort of people who wound up writing and editing the video game magazines and all of that. Games were a new technology that wasn't very well understood, but I think to a degree, they didn't want to be understood either, because this made them seem more special and cool.
You see what he just said? Look, JJ, if you're watching this, the fact you take Ebert's argument at all seriously instead of laughing at really does a good job of giving the impression that you have not played a single video game since that era. And hell, there's another good example of games as art. One from before even what's his name? Not Harper, I don't remember his name. I just remember his last name, Ebert. From even before Ebert was born. You know, this little game called The Landlord's Game, more commonly known as Monopoly. Now, the game is rather blatantly anti-capitalist. It's about how basically big rich people, they basically have the money and then they buy up all the land, and then as that happens, there's a snowball effect where they have more and more power, which they use to consolidate more and more wealth, which gives them more and more power until there's monopoly. And it's incredibly frustrating to be any of the other capitalists, let alone a normal person, because you get screwed over by the big monopoly capitalists, right? And the game conveys that theme by making it deliberately unfair and frustrating for anyone who isn't winning, which is all but one person, or maybe two people until one of them decides that they've had enough and screw over the other person, you know? Like, it's the whole thing. The more property you buy out of Monopoly, the more likely other people are to land on your property and have to pay stuff. The less property you own, the less likely other people to land on your property and have to pay stuff. You can get screwed. That's a snowball effect. If you get sent to jail early, then you can consolidate property and you're screwed. If you get sent to jail late, you aren't landing on other people's property, and it's good for you. And like, it's a game of pure luck. It's not a game of skill. It's a game of pure luck and fortune that's frustrating for all but the lucky one person. You know? So that is a very good example of how you can use game design to convey a message in a way that you just couldn't in a film, you know? But yeah, both Undertale, which uses gaming elements and then subverts those expectations to tell a message about how games, about how we interact with games as art, as well as Monopoly, which uses game design as an element, as a method to convey how capitalism is bad. Both of those are very strong examples of game design being used to convey a message, and now that I actually think about it, there's a lot of untapped potential here. Like, the majority of games aren't really going for this. Games are either unartistic, like fucking, not FBA, NBA, like NBA whatever, like the new basketball game. It's like, oh, you can play as all your favorite basketball stars, and it's like, yeah, there's really an artistic message here, or it's like The Last of Us, where, yeah, you could make Ebert's argument that it's not doing much that a film couldn't do. It's still distinctly art on its own, even though it's a game. It's the fact there's gameplay doesn't stop it from being art. The art, you know? But, like, in terms of games which are art, that are artistic in a way that a film, let alone a dance or book, could never be, there's a lot of untapped potential sitting right there, you know? And it's like, I think part of why we don't take them seriously is because all the games in the front spotlight are made by big AAA studios, which don't really think in terms of this. But if you look in the whole indie game sphere, I do feel like you do get a lot more of this sort of stuff. Again, Undertale, what I just talked about, indie game, Deltarune, which is okay. We don't know its messaging, but it has messaging. There's readings done of it, and there's very much used the gameplay. Another indie game. Hell, here's another indie game, Celeste. It's a game. It's about being trans and the struggle of realizing one's trans and like egg cracking and all that, analogized through climbing up a mountain. That's an indie game. Like, those are just a couple examples which I can actually tell you what the themes are right off the top of my head. Like, you know, indie games do this a lot better than AAA games, but of course, if AAA games are niche, then indie games are very fucking niche, you know? So, yeah. That's my video, that's my counter argument. So yeah, that was the video. I just made it. If you enjoyed, hit the like button. You obviously liked it if you were watching it for 10 whole minutes. Subscribe if you want to see more. Yada yada. You get the drill. YouTubers say this, but yeah. So that was a pretty decent video I think I made there. I mean, I think the audio quality was pretty low. Like, you could tell I was definitely rushing to get it done by a certain point so I could start editing by a certain point, because I really want to get out of the cycle of releasing one video every 2 weeks and try and get back onto 1 week or like 8 days or whatever. But yeah, I mean, I don't think it was too bad. I was able to make it a little bit better in editing. There was a couple times when I just straight up took drinks of water. You could hear in the audio, and there was a big pause which I cut out in post. Yeah. Oh, yes, I will admit that. You aren't stopping me. But yeah, that happened. I feel like there were some times when I definitely could have made my points more succinctly, and definitely, like, there's one time in particular, like, when I bring up Donkey Kong, when it's like, yeah, I probably should have just brought that up earlier instead, but overall, not too bad. I think I made good points. I think I made them not as succinctly as possible, but still pretty succinctly. But yeah, so it's a thing. Getting the assets for this wasn't too bad. I have a couple that I'm really proud of, like the shot of the Monopoly game where one in like late stage Monopoly. Yep, I'm pretty proud of that shot. So yeah, I think we got a video here ready to go. So yeah.